Hi, I'm Ken Howard, and welcome to the Gay Therapy LA podcast. Today, I want to talk about what I call the golden boys, gay men at midlife. My friend Jackson is an icon of gay men at midlife. Honestly, if he's what 50 plus is like, then sign me up. First of all, his thick head of gray hair is the envy of men half his age. Then there's his body, sculpted and luxuriously muscular despite well over a decade of living with HIV. Then there's his adorable partner, who both provides a youthful giggle and evokes one out of Jackson on a regular basis about everything from current events to a friend's amusing trials and tribulations. These are not to mention his professional success, allowing him to afford what is by any measure a luxurious standard of living. And for Jackson, midlife is not about gloom and doom and gay invisibility. How does he do it? We'll look at this in a minute. But for too many gay men at midlife, which varies in its definition from anyone over 30 to silver foxes in their mid-40s or 50s or beyond, midlife is not a time of thriving, but of striving to cope with perceived losses of social status, of physical prowess, and professional effectiveness. But in their classic book, Golden Men, Gay Men at Midlife, the authors Harold Kudin, a PhD, and Charles Flowers state, 40 is the age that gay men stop living their lives for others and start living them for themselves. Amen to that, right? How liberating. As gay children and adolescents, we have had to capitulate to others, the dominant heterosexist paradigm, so often that by midlife it gets weary to accommodate others' prejudices at all. And then it's then that we become the most self-liberated and unapologetic about our gay selves. Unfortunately, this also coincides with a time of feeling the sting of ageism from our community's socially powerful youth, some more frequently feeling it than others. Midlife implies much in just its name. Mid, meaning equidistant between 2 points, and life, the entire experience of being. In midlife, we are youthful enough to remember where we have been since birth, growing all the while physically and socially, but we're also old enough to begin to contemplate the idea of our eventual demise, something that is said to distinguish humans from all other animals. Poor coping with midlife is tantamount to the worst of both worlds, not learning from our mistakes, trying to be something like youthful that we are not, fearing for the future, and failing to fully appreciate both what is behind us and what is yet to come. Skillful coping with midlife, however, involves the practical application of both cognitive, our thinking, and behavioral, what we are doing, those skills that help us to thrive with the best of both worlds, appreciating that we are not yet elderly, yet appreciating that we have achieved maturity. These are some of the skills of successful aging that I work with my psychotherapy and coaching clients all the time at gaytherapyla.com. Eric Erikson, the psychologist and theorist and author and lecturer, said that we all pass through certain important developmental phases in the human lifespan, and that every age has both a challenge and a reward. Part of the key to enjoying life is to enjoy each stage as it is experienced, not obsessing over the last one, not anticipating the next one, but enjoying the exact phase of life where you are. The same holds true with the pagan concept of the wheel of the year, or the seasons. You don't try to build a snowman in July, you might enjoy the beach instead. And you don't try to run through the sprinklers for fun in February, except, maybe some days in LA where I am. You work with what Mother Nature gives you at that time, at that season, at that point in the wheel. This is part of the concept of the local food movement. Staying in the present moment, enjoying it, even savoring it, is, for some, the key to happiness. So what are the most important points of advice that I have observed in gay men who are the most successful at coping with midlife, especially the guys I've worked with over 28 years now in my practice, as a specialist in gay men and gay male couples for individuals and couples. So here's number one. It's don't let anyone tell you you can't. I started gymnastics training at 34 and aerial circus skills training, kind of Cirque du Soleil style, at 43. No is a word that my ears tend to filter out. When we push our bodies gently, they tend to go in the direction we want. Midlife bodies are capable of much more than we originally think sometimes. And we have to use our cognitive skills about hearing no. Sometimes no is reasonable. I mean, we have to accept that sometimes. But we also want to have some kind of psychological defense and resistance against this idea of ageism that says, no, old man, you can't do this. It's like, well, once in a while, that's true. If you're 55, you're not going to be able to be accepted, by NASA to become, an astronaut or something. There's some no, but, we want to really not take no for an answer for the things that we want to do at midlife. Number two is take care of your physical self. It is the tendency of men at midlife to gain weight easily because our metabolism slows down, and even eating the same amounts will have us put on weight that same amount of food 15 or 20 years earlier would not have. I asked my doctor one time, I see kind of the legendary HIV doctor Michael Gottlieb in LA, and when I was about 45, he was about 65. And I said, how much less do you have to eat at 65 than you did at 45 in order to maintain the same weight? He said about half the food. And he worked with a trainer also. And I thought it was really interesting that the magnitude of his food reduction was that much. And I've kind of kept that in mind because the default is that you will gain unwanted weight in a not so healthy way if you don't kind of change your eating habits and your exercise habits, but particularly your food, at later and later ages of life. And also, paying attention to what nutrition your body needs at different times of life. You also need to exercise in a way that you find both fun, so that the behavior positively reinforces itself because it's fun, you like to do it, and consistent. A lot of trainers have said to me over the years, consistency in your exercise routine is one of the most important components. It is a myth that men at midlife must always be paunchy. Don't be afraid to start at the beginning. The only requirement for being at a gym is the desire to work out. That's all. You don't have to pass some kind of a beauty contest to walk through the front door, even of the gyms, in the so-called gay neighborhoods. Only sincere users of efficiently designed equipment, can be there. So, go early in the morning or late in the evening if you want to avoid the peak times for crowds or maybe the intimidating scene aspect. But better yet, I say go anytime you want because everybody has a right to be there. And if you're somehow made to feel uncomfortable because you're already, not a physique model, that's not the point. The point of being there is to take care of your physical self. And there might be other ways that you take care of your physical self. At whatever age you are, have you had a talk with your doctor about what kinds of tests you need at that age, 30, 40, 50, 60? Have you taken an inventory about the things that support your physical self, your diet, your exercise, things about your environment, and have you also looked for things that might stress you out? Are you putting yourself under too many demands or stressors at work? Is there a way that we can somehow mitigate those things? Certain kinds of habits. I'm not pristine with everything. I always joke that Nacho cheese Doritos are kind of my vice. But within reason, we have to look at ways very consciously and say to yourself, how am I taking care of my physical self at every age? The next one is let go of past hurts at midlife. Women have outlived men for generations, and it's theorized that it's because they just know how to handle stress better. Take a hint on women's superior life expectancy data. Don't sweat the small stuff and work to resolve the big stuff. So when I say let go of past hurts, we're talking about that phrase in terms of overcoming trauma or evolving over time to love yourself more profoundly. Sometimes it means forgiving, but forgiving in therapy can be a complicated topic. For people who have been severely abused or are trauma survivors, forgiveness isn't quite so much the word always, it can be, as much as it is healing and kind of letting go of things that happened in the past so that you are embracing your best self for right now and setting the stage for your best self for your future. And that's one of the things that I think my work with guys in therapy and coaching emphasizes is when you let go of past hurts, you're not letting the people that harmed you off the hook. You're not endorsing or condoning what they did to you, but you are moving past it in a new phase of life so that you can focus on where you are and making a good time of that rather than only on where you've been, particularly if where you've been had a lot of difficulty to it. The next one is learn from your mistakes. If you filed bankruptcy at 39, get on the ball with making and keeping a budget, setting aside money for retirement, and addressing through, again, behavioral therapy if necessary, maladaptive spending habits. Commit to concepts like lifelong learning and continuous quality improvement of your life. Think about the resources that you need. I work with a lot of guys on super practical problem-solving stuff, like how do you manage money? Not all therapists will do this. Sometimes coaches will. But, one of the things about midlife and beyond is really taking care of your financial health. I have a blog article on gaytherapyla.com that's 7 ways to take care of your financial self. So if you go to gaytherapyla.com and you click on the blog tab and the search box, you could just search for financial self and it'll come up. But that's a good one because the physical, like we said, but then also the financial and also the emotional. Think to yourself, if let's say you're 40, what kind of lessons can you learn from past mistakes in your 20s and 30s that you don't want to repeat in your 40s and 50s and beyond? Sometimes it just takes reflecting on where you think the mistakes really were and then living differently. The cumulative wisdom of older people. The next one is respect what is your body's friend and what is not. Sugar, fat, carbs, alcohol, preservatives, gambling, shopping, the internet, different psychoactive substances. These all might have a role in life, perhaps occasionally a positive and a useful one, but their role should only be in proportion to their cost-benefit ratio. Once that ratio is exceeded, put them in their proper place by any means necessary, from changing diet habits to being in therapy to 12-step programs to 12-step alternative programs. I work with a lot of guys who want a completely secular, alternative to 12 steps if they find 12 steps too religious or too spiritual even. But for other gay men, 12-step models are fine and they make it work for them. But it's having an understanding about what works for you and what doesn't in terms of what is friendly to your body and to your mind. And then, crack the whip and get rid of stuff that doesn't serve you in terms of what's toxic to your body and to your life. The next point about succeeding in midlife is get over your parents. Whatever damage they did to you as a child, by midlife, you've been an adult long enough to set aside those early challenges and take responsibility for your own success and destiny regardless. Interact with difficult aging parents or others only to the extent that you protect yourself from interpersonal toxicity by limiting your exposure to them. Susan Forward's book, Toxic Parents, has a great explanation of this. That if you had toxic parents, and the subtitle of that is Overcoming Their Harmful Legacy and Reclaiming Your Life. I love that book, Toxic Parents, if you're a survivor of abuse or some kind of emotional distress or neglect or something from your parents. So it's this idea that you're not condoning what your parents did, but by midlife, you have the opportunity at this phase of life to kind of say whether you had great parents who laid a good foundation for you, a strong sense of self and protected your self-esteem and all this stuff, or if you had parents, let's say, with gaps in their parenting skills, either they were abusive or neglectful or just kind of out to lunch or absent. By midlife, you're saying to yourself, what can I do now? How can I empower myself now where I am, regardless of where I came from in my family of origin? Be that as it may, how can I be a success now and later? The next point is use mentors. I am huge about this. I preach this to my clients all the time. Because just because you're old enough to be a dad to an adult doesn't mean that you can't still learn from those even older than you, or even people who are younger than you but whose expertise is in a different area. We have to resist this social notion that older people are worthless and not worth talking to and not worth listening to. What comes out of their mouth, the mouths of older people, in words of advice should be marketed as a commodity worth more than platinum. Because if we just bother to listen to older people, they probably have good advice about how they handled a problem that happened at an earlier phase of life. Older guys than me, going back to fitness, if I see somebody who's 70 or 80 years old and they have good mobility and they have good stamina and they have good kind of range of motion and they don't seem to be full of aches and pains, I will ask them what they did in their 40s and 50s in order to set the stage for being a particularly fit senior in their 70s or 80s. And a lot of times the answer is just activity. I've noticed that very consistently. When I ask sometimes women, but often older men, about these things, they basically say keep active. But I also use mentors in other ways. When I teach a course at the USC School of Social Work, and mentors who are senior faculty have been incredibly helpful to me. Sometimes other therapists my age or therapists who are a bit older have helped me to develop my practice in some way. When I've done creative writing, which I do kind of for fun, I certainly try to get all the advice I can about being a better creative writer. Using mentors is something that I started to do when I was young, and I really think that it's one of the keys to success that I've had in building a practice, in all of these clinical and academic and creative and certainly personal things too. And there's just no substitute for mentors. So if you have a problem or you have a dream in your head, think about who you might reach out to. And a lot of times when you reach out to older people, you'll find that they very readily will talk to you and help you, because a lot of older people are underutilized. They want people to ask them for advice because they have it to give, but a lot of times their wisdom goes unused, and that's kind of tragic and kind of a waste. And it's kind of a win-win. They like being asked and having their knowledge validated, and then you get the benefit of their advice and say, well, you want to look out for this, and whatever you do, be sure to do this, and whatever you do, don't do this. You can really get a roadmap for how to have a better future when you use mentors. The next point is, you know what? Let young people be as silly and stupid as you were, and you were. You had your turn making mistakes. Let them make theirs. If they are ageist and they don't appreciate you, it's their loss and their mistake. Don't take their word as gospel. If you like younger guys as gay men, there are plenty who will like you. Ooh, daddy, there's a lot of that going on. You don't need them all to like you. Just enough to give you, I don't know, a few hot tricks a year or something, or even one good trophy boyfriend. But there's the old saying, youth is wasted on the young, and that's sometimes true. And if they ask you for advice, which they should be doing, you give it to them. But if you see young people being silly and stupid and making mistakes, remember that's part of their growth. And you were not born as wise as you might be now at midlife or more. So try to let them have the latitude to make those mistakes. And then when they fall on their face and they ask for help, then that's when you support them then. And then the last point is what I call ring them bells. There's a John Kander and Fred Ebb song that Liza Minnelli made famous called Ring Them Bells. And it's about not being isolated. Isolation in old age is one of the biggest problems around, and isolation in general is a social problem, politically and socially. If we weren't dealing with such political drama right now, some of the social problems could get a little more attention. But isolation is something that is particularly a vulnerability for older people. And again, with healthy aging, the most robust older people that I know, way up there, 70s, 80s, sometimes even 90s, are people who are just not isolated. They might have some friends their age if they're not just dead, but they also have friends who are a lot younger or slightly younger. So I always say ring them bells. Go out and meet your neighbors, your coworkers, your colleagues who share interests, and invite people to share important activities with you. If you get a no 6 times for every yes to social invitations that you extend, accept that, okay, that proportion sucks, but the yeses are worth it. People are lazy. That's okay. You just do the inviting and the organizing of trips out to the movies or to dinner or lunch or concerts or theater, or host a theme party, or go camping, or volunteer for something, or be an activist in something. Somebody has to direct this cruise. It might as well be you. One of my favorite adages that I give my clients is, the antidote to loneliness is initiative. It's the small price to pay for always having something to do and someone to do it with. Now, if all these tips sound idealistic, okay, maybe they've got a positive tone, maybe even a little bit Pollyanna, because I know, stuff happens and sets people back. But I've seen guys in my practice apply versions of all these tips frequently, in my long experience, 28 years of seeing how guys age over time. And I've seen how the proper use of these skills raises the quality of life for gay men at midlife. Apply President Obama's mantra, yes, we can. And if this interests you, learn how you can implement these skills and experience the same joy of this special time of life, like all of them, that we only pass through once. So, that's today. For more information on therapy or counseling services, if you're in LA and Southern California, or no matter where you are, across the United States or across the world, I offer sessions through phone, FaceTime, Skype, lots of different ways of working if there's something going on that you would like help with. And my phone number in the United States, in LA, is 310-339-5778. So 310-339-5778. You can call or text. Text is a little bit faster. You can email me at ken@gaytherapyla.com, Or you can visit my website, gaytherapyla.com, and a little box will pop up for contacting me, and that will send me an email, it'll send me a text message, it'll get a hold of me if you're interested in individual or even couples work on just about any of these topics. If you have comments or questions about podcast episodes, you're welcome to ask those. And if you have suggestions for future episodes, I'm happy to hear those too, and I'll try to develop an episode around the issues or the questions that you have about thriving in gay men's mental health. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.